laying on the hammer to the Minnesota Timberwolves, and Victor Wembanyama really coming back and making a difference in this game. We can go back to the first 6 minutes because I keep pointing to it. He had 16 points, guys, and 5 rebounds. Before we looked up, he was sitting down on the bench, and he had already made
Last night after the game, you took to X and said this of Wemby, already the greatest defender that I have seen with my own 2 eyes.
One tonight in San Antonio. Timberwolves and Spurs tied 2-2 coming in. Minnesota fans may not like it, but Wemby not serving any further time for that elbow to the jaw of Naz Reid on Sunday night. Played just 12 minutes in Game 4 after getting tossed in the second quarter. Greg Popovich on Monday caught up with Wemby as soon as the Spurs landed in San Antonio, and there's Pop in attendance on Tuesday.
Obviously, I'm going to be excited. I'm going to have butterflies, so excitement is not something abnormal at this point in the playoffs.
2 nights ago, Victor Wembanyama walked off the floor in Minneapolis looking completely stunned. The refs reviewed the elbow on Naz Reid, upgraded it to a flagrant 2, and suddenly Wemby was gone from the game while the entire arena erupted with chants to kick him out. It was easily the roughest moment of his young career so far.
All the criteria has been upgraded to a flagrant foul penalty 2. Wembanyama has been ejected.
4 points, an early ejection, and confusion written all over his face. The whole thing looked ugly fast. But then Game 5 happened, and everything changed immediately. Wemby came out looking furious, in the best possible way. 18 points in the first quarter alone, attacking from everywhere on the floor like he took the entire Game 4 situation personally. By the end of the night, he finished with 27 points, 17 rebounds, 5 assists, and 3 blocks while the Spurs destroyed Minnesota by 29 points. And just like that, everybody got reminded who this guy really is.
Loved it, man, and that's what I expected from him. That's what everybody expected from him. And I think he had a lot of that extra energy saved up from missing, Game 4 in Minnesota. So he came out like a, bullet out of a cannon, or however you want to call it, and was just filled with a lot of adrenaline. And he got his guys and his troops behind him to have 21 and 11 and a half, 16 points in like the first 6 minutes. Unheard of. It was an unbelievable performance, but he's nothing short of amazing. And he kept that going throughout the whole game. So I love the fact that he came with that mindset. He also instilled in his others. They weren't satisfied. Even though when they were up double digits, they made sure they kept their foot on the gas and showed a lot of maturity.
This is still the same alien from France who dropped a 12-block triple-double earlier in the series. The same guy who hung 39 points, 15 rebounds, and 5 assists in Game 3. The unanimous Defensive Player of the Year. The same player who has looked like the best guy on the court for most of this matchup. Minnesota spent 2 full days convincing themselves they had finally cracked the code. Wemby spent 33 minutes shredding that idea into pieces. Honestly, the scariest number from this game wasn't even the 27 points or the 17 rebounds. It was something way smaller than that, and we'll get to it soon enough. But first, we have to talk about how this whole thing started, because the story didn't begin with the ejection itself. It started with what Minnesota thought they discovered afterward. Once Wemby got tossed with more than 8 minutes left in the second quarter of Game 4, the entire conversation around the series flipped overnight. Suddenly, everybody started acting like the Wolves had found some secret blueprint. People began questioning whether Wemby could really handle playoff basketball. Maybe he is not built for this physical style. Maybe the moment is too big. Can Wemby deal with playoff intensity? You could hear those conversations everywhere. And honestly, after Game 4, people had reasons to wonder. Wemby looked genuinely confused when the refs announced the penalty. He even asked Harrison Barnes, "What does that mean?" Because he had literally never been ejected before in his entire career. He finished with only 4 points in 13 minutes, the fewest he had ever scored in any game. Meanwhile, Minnesota grabbed a 114-109 win and tied the series. Suddenly, the pressure shifted completely. But inside the Spurs locker room, they clearly saw things very differently. Coach Mitch Johnson said Minnesota spent the entire game trying to overwhelm Wemby physically on every single possession. Constant grabbing, pulling jerseys, bumping him off spots, throwing elbows into his body, making every second uncomfortable. De'Aaron Fox even said Wemby's left arm got held during the rebound sequence that led to the elbow. Dylan Harper said it looked like Wemby was simply trying to protect himself after getting grabbed all night long. When you zoom out and really look at this series, Minnesota's strategy becomes obvious. They are not trying to outskill San Antonio. They are trying to wear them down physically. McDaniels and Naz Reid crash into him on every rebound. Gobert sits at the rim waiting for contact. Bodies fly in transition. Hands are everywhere. The entire idea was simple. Make every possession miserable, and see if a 22-year-old star in his first serious playoff run would finally crack under it. In Game 4, for one night, it worked. So the Wolves walked into Game 5 believing they could do it again.
About what the alien did today,
Just being aggressive. You know, he missed most of last game, so I bet a point of emphasis for him was coming out being aggressive and putting an imprint on the game early. And he did that. He made shots. Like I said, he started the whole thing for the San Antonio Spurs, and it showed with everybody else how they played as well.
Yeah. Impressions of Wemby's first half today?
Well, he made it a point to come out here and show that, you know, just to show like last game, you know, he was missing.
Sure.
You know, he came out there today. He was ultra aggressive. He you know, played through a lot of contact, got to the line, made some shots. Like, he really proved a point today. And you know, this goes to show, like, he's the leader of this team. He's the head of the snake. You know, they have a lot of players, a lot of great players on this team, but they go as one.
You could feel that confidence early. 2. Minnesota came out aggressive immediately, running the exact same physical game plan. They wanted Wemby thinking about Game 4 from the opening tip. They wanted that frustration sitting in the back of his head. 18 first quarter points later, that whole conversation disappeared. Wemby went 6-for-8 from the field and knocked down 2 of 3 from deep in the first 12 minutes alone. Before the quarter even ended, Minnesota's so-called formula already looked completely cooked. And honestly, if you're Chris Finch watching that unfold, that's probably when the panic starts creeping in.
There was a lot that's happened in the last 48 hours in the last game. And I think how that young man came out tonight and played in a variety of ways, in a variety of situations, not just in terms of his production, was extremely
comes
mature.
down to, you know, who can be the more physical team or who can be the team that is able to, you know, withstand those hits. I think he did a great job at that tonight. He didn't falter whenever, you know, he got hit and he fell to the floor. We know that, you know, even the strongest players in the league get hit and they fall. And when he's playing the way that he played tonight, it's hard to beat us.
So you feel like the overall belief level, obviously you're down 3-2, you would have to come back here in a 7, but that you guys can kind of still climb out of this.
Yeah, I don't see nobody in the locker room that's too worried. At the end of the day, man, it's another basketball game. So you come out, put your boots on, and get ready to go to war.
Imagine spending an entire series building a defensive strategy around stopping one player, then watching that same player come out and detonate your entire plan before halftime even arrives. That's the moment you realize something terrifying. The Wolves thought they found Wemby's weakness. Instead, they woke him up. The craziest part is that the scoring wasn't even the biggest statement he made all night. That moment came a little later. About 10 minutes in, Minnesota tested him again. Naz Reid shoved Wemby in the back during a free throw sequence and picked up a technical foul. Right there, that was the real moment that mattered. It was basically the exact same type of physical provocation that triggered the Game 4 ejection. Different play, same message. Push him around, frustrate him, see if he react again. Minnesota wanted to know if Game 4 was the beginning of a pattern or just one emotional moment. This time, Wemby answered perfectly.
Last night after the game, you took to X and said this of Wemby, already the greatest defender that I have seen with my own 2 eyes.
Ooh.
Just saying. So defend your claim to those people who do not see what you see.
Well, one, first of all, good morning. Second of all, he's already the most dominant player in the game of basketball. And when you think of dominant players, you think of them being dominant offensively, paint points, snatching the screws out the rim. But what he's doing defensively, I have never seen this. I believe he had 3 blocks last night. It felt like he had 10. The way he anchors that defense and is able to cover up space, I've never seen nothing like it. On top of that, he has so much of a presence in the middle that he allows his guards and perimeter players to be able to apply a huge amount of pressure.
No yelling, no reaction, no argument, nothing. He calmly stepped to the line, knocked down the free throw, turned around, and went right back to work like nothing happened. That response probably scared Minnesota more than any dunk or block all night, because the message was crystal clear without him saying a single word. You can grab me, push me, and talk all you want. I'm still going to play, and I'm still going to beat you. That's superstar behavior right there. Now we get to the number that should genuinely terrify the Wolves heading into Game 6. One personal foul in 33 minutes. That number says everything about what happened in this game. Minnesota spent the entire night trying to drag Wemby back into chaos, grabbing him the post, bumping him off rebounds, hitting him in transition, constant contact over and over again. And after everything that happened in Game 4, Wemby never lost control for even a second. That's the real problem for Minnesota now. If the physical strategy no longer gets him rattled, then what exactly is left? Naz Reid was talking trash all night. After bullying him on a layup, Reid told Wemby to get in the waiting room. Dawson kept chirping. McDaniels leaned all over him every possession, trying to grind him down physically and mentally at the same time. This was literally the exact same environment that got Wemby tossed 2 nights earlier. Same team, same physical pressure, same non-stop contact, same attempts to get under his skin. The Wolves were practically begging this guy to snap again. He never gave them the reaction they wanted. 33 straight minutes of getting grabbed, bumped, shoved, and talked at, and Wemby finished with just 1 personal foul. That's maturity. That's a player blocking out all the noise, staying locked in, and letting the scoreboard do the talking for him. Honestly, this felt like one of those games coaches show young players when teaching them how to handle pressure without losing control. Yeah, Wemby got fired up. Of course he did. Minnesota was testing him every chance they got. But every single time the intensity rose, he answered the same way. Bucket, rebound, assist, defensive stop. That's why the word reminder keeps coming back in this series. Because what Wemby reminded Minnesota wasn't that he can score. Everybody already knew that. The Wolves already watched him drop 39 earlier in this series. What he reminded them of is something far scarier. Game 4 wasn't the real version of him. The frustrated version, the emotional version, the ejectable version, that was the exception. This is the real Victor Wembanyama, the unanimous Defensive Player of the Year, the 7'5" alien leading the NBA in blocked shots, contested shots, and opponent shooting percentage around the rim. Minnesota thought they discovered a weakness. Wemby spent 33 minutes proving they discovered absolutely nothing. That Naz Reid technical foul was a test. That 1 personal foul from Wemby was the answer. Even if the story stopped there, this still would have been a massive statement game. But the Spurs winning by 29 points needed one more thing to fully break Minnesota's confidence. The rest of the roster had to show up. And they did. Remember, even after Wemby got ejected in Game 4, San Antonio still fought hard. They actually led by 8 in the 4th quarter without their best player. They didn't fold immediately. Minnesota still had to close out a real battle, with Anthony Edwards taking over late with 16 fourth-quarter points, and Gobert and Reid getting easy looks at the rim. After the game, Chris Finch said, "We've got to make those small plays, those dirty plays." And honestly, that quote explains Minnesota's entire identity right now. They're not trying to beat teams with pretty basketball. They want ugly games, physical games, gritty games, slow, grinding battles where every possession feels like a fight. In Game 4, that style worked because the Spurs supporting cast couldn't fully survive without Wemby. Game 5 flipped the whole script. Yes, Wemby set the tone early, no question. But for this to turn into a 29-point beatdown, everybody else had to answer, too. And they absolutely did. Keldon Johnson came off the bench looking fearless. 21 points on 8-for-11 shooting, attacking the basket like he smelled blood in the water. De'Aaron Fox quietly controlled the game. 18 points, 5 assists, smooth and efficient. No forcing shots, no over-dribbling, just calm, veteran basketball. Then there's Stephen Castle, who keeps getting more confident with every game. 17 points on 8-for-11 shooting with 6 assists, playing with zero fear right now. And Dylan Harper, 12 points and 10 rebounds in just 25 minutes, making plays that honestly don't even look normal for a rookie. That young core didn't look nervous at all. They looked ready for the moment. But the stat that really exposed Minnesota wasn't any individual performance. It was this. Spurs points in the paint, 68. Wolves points in the paint, 36. That's brutal. Minnesota built their entire defensive reputation around protecting the paint. Rudy Gobert is a 4-time Defensive Player of the Year. Naz Reid is one of the best mobile bigs in basketball. McDaniels can switch on to almost anybody. And that team got destroyed 68-36 inside. That's not just a Wemby stat. That's a full team statement. Everybody was attacking downhill. Everybody was finishing through contact. Everybody was crashing the glass and putting pressure on the rim, possession after possession. Here's the scariest part for Minnesota, though they actually made a run. Early in the 3rd quarter, the Wolves erupted with a 14-2 burst and erased an 18-point deficit. That's usually the moment young teams panic. That's when inexperienced playoff rosters normally fall apart. The Spurs never blinked. This is the youngest playoff team remaining, and they answered Minnesota's push immediately. Keldon Johnson blocked Gobert at the rim, then turned around and bullied Edwards under basket before knocking down a short jumper. That sequence said everything. Minnesota tried to punch back hard, and the Spurs punched right back harder. That's a young team growing up in real time, right in front of everybody's eyes. San Antonio took everything that happened in Game 4, learned from it fast, and made sure Minnesota wasn't going to drag them into another ugly finish. Wemby reminded the Wolves exactly who he is, and the Spurs reminded everybody else who they are, too. That combination is why this game was essentially finished before the fourth quarter even mattered. Now, heading into Game 6, Minnesota has a serious problem. In a playoff series, teams only have a few real adjustments before they run out of answers. The Wolves' first answer was physicality. Wemby handled that in 3 out of 5 games. Their second answer was frustrating him emotionally and baiting him into mistakes, and that only worked once. Now what? Because right now, they don't look like they have a third solution ready. And the scary part is that the stat line Wemby just dropped wasn't random. 27 points, 17 rebounds, 5 assists, 3 blocks, and 1 foul doesn't happen by luck. That happens when a superstar completely understands what the other team is trying to do and flat out refuses to give them the reaction they want. That's why this felt more like a reminder than some loud statement game. Messages are loud. Messages are made for TV cameras and headlines. Reminders are different. Reminders stick. They stay with you long after the final buzzer sounds. Every single Wolves player is walking into Game 6 remembering they just got embarrassed by 29 points while their entire defensive strategy backfired completely. That's the part that lingers. If you're a Spurs fan right now, the mindset is simple. Finish the job. This team already proved they belong here. Nobody can question that anymore. They finished with one of the best defenses in basketball this season. They won 62 games for a reason. They didn't stumble into this playoff run by accident. They earned this moment. Now the pressure shifts back to Minnesota. Game 6 in Minneapolis is going to be intense. The crowd will be loud. The Wolves are going to come out desperate and aggressive because their season is essentially hanging by a thread. But San Antonio already showed something crucial in Game 5. They showed they can handle the pressure. They showed they can survive physical basketball. And most importantly, they show they don't scare easily anymore. If the Spurs survive that first punch in Game 6, this series might honestly be over before Minnesota even realizes it. And if that happens, Western Conference Final basketball is suddenly back in San Antonio for the first time since the Kawhi era, with a 22-year-old alien leading the entire charge. That's scary for the rest of the league.